Alright, now continuing on, most of the facts are out of the way through the case now. The rest is an explanation as to my understanding of law, how it's supposed to operate, and why I think this is a problem. I do show evidence of my beliefs, and at the end will be my proposed resolution to the problems that we have before us. So continuing on. Another part of jurisdiction is venue or territorial. So the question is, where do you live? This could be a picture. This is a picture of a house, trees, so you might think of physical residence. Well, just because you physically reside somewhere does not constitute jurisdiction alone. Something has to happen legally, administratively, to enter into a legal venue or legal jurisdiction. So just because something happened, let's say you get in a car crash, and you may have been at fault for it, but you worked it out with the other driver, and no cops were called, so you guys exchanged your information, went about your ways. However, if one of you decides to call a cop so that they can get a police record of what happened, so you have more authority in court if you're trying to sue for big damages. When that policeman shows up, they fill out a form, and they have to fill out on that form what legal jurisdiction this event took place in. So it should say township, county, and state. They don't necessarily need city, physical address. Street probably helps so you can pinpoint the location. But we are talking about a legal venue or territory, not necessarily a physical. So once that cop fills out that form goes into the court system. That event now, that car crash, that event has now just entered into a venue jurisdiction. That doesn't mean that those laws apply to that person now. They could still fight for the right of personal jurisdiction. But as far as the event taking place when the police officer filled out the report and entered it into the court system, it submitted that event into a venue sort of jurisdiction. These are what you see, like counties, the border lines, the state border lines, any type of political subdivision type of map is that. And again, this is that jurisdiction form from, I believe it was uscivilprocedure.com. It was on a previous slide. And we are now talking about that territorial jurisdiction, that middle line. Now, here we have an article from domicile.uslegal.com, kind of shining a little bit of light on this whole legal residency versus physical residency type of talk. So here, I'll let you read this. Go ahead and pause to read this. Specifically, this section I blocked off. If you want to read the whole thing, go right ahead. I'm going to carry on because this video takes a lot of space on this disk. Alright, the military also understands this difference between a physical residence and a legal residence. They even have a form. This is a DD form, so that's Department of Defense. Includes all the military branches. And this is a state of legal residence certificate. So you yourself are stating where your legal residence is. Okay, county, state. Some cities have a legal jurisdiction as well. Lansing is one of them. Holt is not. And on this form, I submitted this to my my administrators in my military unit to let them know that I only claim the U.S. of America as my federal jurisdiction. Now, hold on. Some people say this is not a state. Well, we need to talk about what a state is. Okay? So the United States of America, to what I believe, is also a state. Signature, address, and when I submitted it. Now over on this side we have the Black's Law 10th edition, which I own, their definition of state. And I will pause here to let you read on that as well. Okay? And what I'm basically showing is that it doesn't talk about anything in the physical. We're talking about a system, an organization, a process, association, an institution down here. We're not talking about somewhere where you physically live. And on the next slide, we have this lecture from Edward Heath Robinson at Geography and Geographic Information Science, University of Illinois, and Urbana-Champaign. In this lecture, he states, and I want to hone in, you can read this whole paragraph, how state and government are used synonymously and ambiguously at times. But the crux of the whole thing, states are non-physical judicial entities, okay, of the international or national legal system. If we check on Google, just let Google's dictionary tell us what state is. It mentions the different types of way we use the word state. So something in its state of being, okay, it is almost like a verb. Even though it says noun here. I guess the verb would be whatever state you're declaring it to be in. And then we get on to the political talk, a nation, a territory, political community, government. Again, more government references. And then on this side, when you express something, you're stating something. What you have expressed is your statement. But none of these explanations say it's a physical place where you live, because it's not. So when you tell people I live in the state of Michigan, you are saying that you have a legal residency in the government of Michigan. This is not the state of Michigan. This is the physical land and water, 2 peninsulas that are already named Michigan. Already has a name. Okay, and these are the things I'm going to mention in court. Take your time to look them over. This is the state of Michigan. And it doesn't include this land and water. These are just to represent the geographic location that these non-physical judicial entities are. Okay, you got the seal of the state of Michigan. This is what it represents. When you go on mlive.com, their sites, you can see this map. They show it. And I just put this down here because Michigan State University, state being the government, but pretty much all colleges in Michigan are going to be funded by the state. But regardless, I believe this school was built after Michigan achieved a statehood type of government. So intangible, non-physical geographic borders, and it was created. This little box here was created. This is Ingham County, created by this paragraph in our territorial law book. This predates the state of Michigan's construction. I believe this was in 1818 or somewhere around there. And the state of Michigan was not formed and ratified to be recognized by the U.S. Congress until 1837, if I'm not mistaken. Now over here we have another seal of a school here in Michigan. This one predates the state of Michigan's construction. So we have something being called Michigan before the state of Michigan. University of Michigan. Here's a territorial law book, the one that was on the previous slide showing Ingham County's paragraph right here that did not create the land of Ingham County. It created a legal jurisdiction. That's it. So if you say you live in Ingham County, you are saying that you live in a legal jurisdiction. You have a legal residency there. Has nothing to do with the physical, besides a geographic location. On this side of the slide we have when the state of Michigan was entered into Congress, so 1837, 34th session of Congress. I'm sorry, 24th session of Congress. Congress session 2. And it's this right here, I believe these two paragraphs, section 1 and 2. Saying state of Michigan's entered into the Union and informing the Treasury to basically open up an account for them. Okay, there's also federal venue jurisdiction. This is all stuff that you legal professionals in the court already know, but I need to inform the jury that there's another overlying jurisdiction in the same place. So you also live in the 6th Circuit, Western District of Michigan. If you do live there, this court will be there, and I live there. As you can see, Holt is directly below Lansing, and Lansing is in the Western District. Okay, this is where I declared my legal residency. This is why we are in this courtroom and not in state of Michigan courtrooms. Now, the U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 2, explains that the citizens of each state shall be entitled to privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. So, like I mentioned before in the complaint, that when you travel from the state of Michigan and you're a citizen of the state of Michigan, you go into the state of Ohio's jurisdiction, then your rights from your constitutional state of Michigan rights do not carry over into the state of Ohio. You are now protected under the state of Ohio's constitution. That's what their laws bounce off of. So once you enter into one state's jurisdiction, when you register in, you have entered yourself into the jurisdiction of all the states as you travel through them. And this is another extrapolation of Article 4, Section 2. You can take your time and read this. Pause if you would like. This definitely helps define more between state citizenship, national citizenship, and the relationship. We're mentioning Dred Scott case again. And I'm just going to stop at the box that I bordered on this. But you can take your time and read it as you would like, either in this video or in the PowerPoint presentation that's also on this disc. Okay, well, I didn't make a box on this one, apparently. So a lot of this we'll talk about Civil War, and that is one of the crux of times of when a lot of things changed, and I'll explain that closer to the end of my entire presentation when I kind of explain when things happened in the United States that changed over what I believe to be from a nation of individual property ownership back into a state of feudalism. Now, here we have, this is just a graphic off Google Images, but this is several states. This is one whole jurisdiction. So for me, and as an example, I was born in Lansing, Michigan, birth certificate registered there. I grew up there and got my driver's license there, so now I have a state ID that I had to apply for when I became an adult, and even as a teenager before, with the waiver of my parents and all that. This is where I entered into the jurisdiction of the several states. And then as I traveled around, I got married in Texas, so that marriage certificate was registered in the state of Texas, and I was divorced in Colorado, okay, which is here. And then when I was done with my military service, I returned back to Michigan, where I started my own business, registered my business in the state of Michigan. Does that mean what happened here and here doesn't count? No, because this is all part of the same citizenship, the same contract. It's not the same contract as this one, the national. So citizen of the United States here, borderless from inside the land. Over here, several states, many different jurisdictions, but it's one citizenship for all of it. All right, now personal jurisdiction. Like I said, I was born in Michigan and registered into the state of Michigan. Both my parents were citizens of the state of Michigan, so I was a state citizen of the state of Michigan when I was born. Here is from the USCIS, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services .gov website, and kind of explanation of this is how citizenship works. Okay, you can either be naturalized, where you fill out your paperwork, you're an immigrant and you decided you want to be a U.S. citizen, you had to apply for it and get approved. So that's a conscious decision. You knew what you were getting into. When you're born, even if you're born in the United States, but your parents are not citizens of the United States, you're not a citizen of the state or of the United States. Okay? You would still be considered an immigrant at that point. So and even if one parent is a citizen of the U.S. but the other one's not, like say soldiers when they deploy overseas, get married to a foreigner, have a baby, that baby can still be a U.S. citizen even though they're not in the United States, because the father or mother, whoever the service member is a citizen of the United States. So it has to do with your parents' contract with the government, not where you were physically born. Here we have from encyclopediafederalism.org. This is their opinion on dual citizenship. So go ahead and take your time to read this. This talks about, I don't agree with the Civil War being the time that a federal citizenship started, because as I explained before, newly freed slaves became U.S. citizens. That allowed them to stay in the country, and then they had to select what state they were going to be in to become a citizen of that state. So, two different citizenships, two different contracts with two different governments. Go ahead and take your time to read that a bit. And the further proof of this being true, this is from nolo.com, a pretty generic website, but it brings up a point that's very hard to refute, and that is the dual sovereignty, just like we mentioned in the previous slide, and the double jeopardy. How you can get charged for the same crime in federal as in the state. If you get charged and you serve your time in the state, the federal government can say, you know what, that wasn't long enough. They should have been punished more and charge you for the same exact crime, and you will have to serve that sentence consecutively. It doesn't overlap. These are two cases that have to do with that. Gamble versus the United States. You can take your time to pause, read through it. And the other case, Abbate versus United States. Okay, and then here's two laws right here. This is from the federal government, the U.S. Code, Title 18, subsection 113 on assaults, that have larger punishments than the state of Michigan does for their section on assaults. Two jurisdictions that are occupying the same place, that both can charge you if you are contracted to both, and you can serve both those punishments. Why do we have two different punishments for the same thing? Because you volunteered to go into both jurisdictions. Alright, I'm not gonna start this video, but well, I'm not going to play it all the way through, but you can watch it. This is,
we are going to talk,
I believe,
about
a great
time
explanation
period called
on the
Enlightenment. It is during the Enlightenment
what
that we see
inspired the
huge
founders,
changes in the world
Enlightenment
in terms of the
period,
way
so John
people
Locke,
view
Montesquieu,
government. For
Thomas
the long
Hobbes,
history of the world,
Rousseau,
there was always a king, and
Locke,
it was the job of that
already,
king to
which, by
make
the way,
sure
is the name of one
that
of the
people
townships
stayed in line,
in Ingham County.
that people did what they were supposed to do, and it was the job of the king
of what each person believed. It's not a very long video. It's 12 minutes, but it's a very good, thorough, quick explanation, just to help the jury get on board with quick understanding. Over here we have a professor at Yale talking about John Locke's ideas on property, and the reason why I picked John Locke as a person to find quotes from and beliefs is because he heavily inspired Thomas Jefferson, who was primarily charged with writing our Declaration of Independence, and he used a lot of stuff from John Locke and put into that Declaration of Independence, which constitutes our reason for why we became independent from England in the first place. And this tab coming up is going to show some specific quotes. I don't have the name of the website, but I can get it if anyone needs it. It says British quotes. There's also French quotes, which has Rousseau and Montesquieu and all them on it. This is kind of hard to read because it's a little bit blurry. It's the best I could do, but I'm going to read it off to you. So the state, according to my ideas, is a society of men established for the sole purpose of the establishment, preservation, and promotion of their civil interests. I call on civil interests life, freedom, the health of the body, the possession of external goods such as our money, land, houses, furniture, and things of that nature. So the purpose of the government is to preserve and promote our freedoms to do that stuff. And by freedoms, you could say rights. Locke's view on property. Though the earth and all interior creatures be common to all men, yet every man is owner of his own person. None other than himself does not own an interest in her work, her body, and work of his hands belong to him. He combines his work at everything he does, leave the state in which nature left it, and attach to something that is hers. By this he made his property. The thing is extracted from it being common where nature had put it. His work adds something which excludes the common right of other men. So, when nature provides whatever resources we need to use, it's not ours. We can't claim it until we pull from it and apply our energy, our knowledge, our tools, whatever we're going to do to that object. And then we take possession of it, and we have the right to exclude other people from it. It becomes our possession, our property. And without the right to own property, anybody could have came and claimed my house from me and said, well, it's not yours. So there is a need to own property, and especially to survive in weather and to keep criminals and insects and animals out.
Well, and then he comes to
Jean-Jacques Rousseau was another famous French Enlightenment era thinker. And these were some of his quotes he had to say, which are kind of a little bit condescending, but he had a different and kind of opposing view at some points. I believe one of the things he believed in addition with this, was that people were selfish to have a right to private property. And I know that our founding fathers who created our government didn't believe that, and they didn't pull from this belief about property for us, because it explains in their actions that they do. That I'll explain later. But he does have a very good explanation of the social contract, which I don't have quoted here, but I will explain in court. And he also has a problem with tax farming. And this is from USA Founding Fathers blogspot.com, And this is Statement of John William Kurowski, founder of American Constitutional Research Service, before the Committee on Ways and Means of the United States House of Representatives, June 1995. Very interesting article. I hope that you guys take your time to read it. You got quotes from Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson in here. Very important. I feel like some people have lost their understanding of what the intention was for the founders of this country. Anyways, you can read the whole thing on the PowerPoint. I gotta get through these slides faster. This is John Adams' bio from Massachusetts.gov, mass.gov. What's so important about John Adams? Go ahead and read these sections. He's basically one of the founding fathers that helped create the first Constitution. His Constitution he made for the state of Massachusetts is something that the U.S. copied or followed the plan of in order to form the nations. So he's heavily influential on the way that our government was set up. And his wife was opposed to slavery, and they did not own any slaves. This is John Adams' dissertation on Canon Feudal law. This would be during the times of the Federalist Papers, so this is before the U.S. Constitution was written, when our country first started. All they had was the Articles of Confederation at this time, and now they're trying to figure out if they need to make a big centralized federal government or not. So they formed two parties, Federalists and Anti-Federalists. I know most of you legal professionals probably know about it, but John Adams is uniquely honed in on the very things that drove our independence, I believe. Please take your time to read this. I'm going to be reading these sections outlined in court, but I'm going to summarize it for you, is that John Adams was a pretty staunch Protestant, and he understood that not only were the monarchs, the kings and queens of Europe, exercising feudalism and controlling everything, that the Catholic Church was doing it as well, and that spearheaded their movement from England to the new land of America, where they set up the original colonies. Not John Adams and himself, but his ancestors. And he goes off on Canon and Feudal laws as his main title of his whole dissertation. So that has about 13 pages. Like I said, I'm only going to go over the spots that's bordered up. If you want to read the whole thing, I suggest. It's a good read. I've already read it a couple times over. Alright. And John Adams' close friend and also most hated enemy, as sometimes, was Thomas Jefferson. So here we have kind of his bio. We can talk about, we'll be talking about the stuff that's in border in court. So if you want to just look at those or read the whole thing, go ahead. And like I said, use the PowerPoint because some of these are long. This other section, which I'm probably going to have to replay now. because it follows after this one. The reason why I bring up Thomas Jefferson is because he drafted the 1785 Northwest Ordinance, which helped establish the state of Michigan and the state of Indiana, state of Ohio, state of Wisconsin, and what their requirements were in order to join statehood. And one of the biggest things out of there was to sell the land, not to rent or lease it or to put a lien on it. It was to sell it. What the state of Michigan did was look like they were doing that, but they used a different form of title to give to the residents, and and it really changed the dynamic of how we own land now. So here they're even explaining how the townships were kind of numbered, except they're numbered. 1 is over here in this corner, and it goes to 6, 7 down here to 12, and then section 17 is right about here. That's a section that my property is technically located in, according to the survey plot for Ingham County and Delhi Township. Again, these are the boxes I'm going to go over. If you ever want to stop this slide, you have to left click on this magnifying glass, and then you can left click again to zoom in and move it around. But then to go back, you have to hit right click and it starts scrolling again. So that's why I say check it out on the PowerPoint presentation itself. Okay, here we have the actual drafted document, plan for the Western Territory. It's kind of hard to read. It's jumbled in a bit. I tried to highlight some stuff that was interesting, like Thomas Jefferson was trying to end slavery even back then, 1785, so it was even before the U.S. Constitution was drafted. Something that's not regularly taught in public schools. And of course, after our revolution, France attempted their own too and abolished feudalism with the little time that they did have it back, until the monarchs regained control once again of that country. And that revolution failed until Napoleon came in and swept through again. Now this document, if you have already read this, this document would seem like it's helping the defense for this case, because it's talking about how, except for the way they explain the feudal system, is just like how ours is operating. But they say this is just archaic. It's not what we have today, but it is very close to what we have today. And I take my time to refute the points in this to show that this is being proposed by the Atlantic.com business, and they don't cite any of their work besides some historical events, and I took my time to refute those. And there we go. There's a big one right there. They even agreed that the colonists developed the American idea of citizenship, which included certain rights. Really, the colonists didn't develop a citizenship. That's something that came in with our founding fathers. Certain rights, such as the right to own land. And then they say, oh, and responsibilities such as the duty to pay fees on the land. Well, no. You don't own something and pay fees for it. You're missing a step there. And that all gets explained. Here also, the Northwest Ordinance established that the federal government owned all the lands. Yeah. The federal government did own the land because it was a treaty from another nation. From Britain, when we defeated them, we regained all that land that was west of the Appalachians and north of the Ohio River. So then this ordinance was established so that people could start settling in there, and then once there was enough people there, they could create their own local government. But the way they present it is, person collected the fees from the tenants. They did not have property tax that was reoccurring back then. And this is something in a big business magazine that's being pumped out to lots of people. It's very deceptive. There's only like 5 times that the federal government imposed a property, a tax on land and property. And that was to emergency funds during time of war. The local state governments are the ones that made it a reoccurring tax by putting a lien on the property and never letting us own the land and just making us tenants. That's what made the system feudal. Right there, they're talking about the dates they did it. Excuse me. And those are the 3 major wars. And they mentioned the anti-rent war in New York down here. And what they're not mentioning is, if you read the Wikipedia page on it, that this event was from a foreign nation still had land in the U.S. and they were charging feudal fees to the people living there. And the people were like, I thought we were independent. We're U.S. citizens. Why are we still paying these very burdening taxes? And so New York had to abolish the feudal system, but they said that doesn't get rid of the property tax, as in you can still be charged rent to use somebody else's stuff. But yeah, there's no feudalism left, so you had to get rid of the feudal tenures. So please take your time to see, because this is a big explanation on how things have gotten misconstrued and misrepresented. And this is going over John Adams having to tax the nation, the land, to help pay for our fighting we were doing with France after our revolution and after our U.S. Constitution, because we started trading with England again, and France didn't like that because they were still at war with them, so France started attacking us, and then we raised money. It had a set amount. It was $2 million. As soon as that was set, then those funds created the U.S. Navy. That's explained in this, and it's not explained in the major article that went into a business magazine. Because I hear a lot from attorneys that, there's always been property taxes, and that they just sum it all up with that. There's between 1893 and we'll just say 89, the time of our Congress, that's almost 100 years, there was no property taxes besides the 4 events that needed immediate funding from the national government to pay for some wars, or else we would have lost everything. Here I have quotes from the Founding Fathers on taxes. I probably will be reading just about all these in court, so take your time. Look through them. I'm not worried about the comments on these. I don't think I have any of them bordered, no. But if you guys want to bring them up in court, we can do that and we can address it. Okay, so now the big argument online now, because a lot of other people are looking into this, not just me, is allodial title versus fee simple. So originally, from what I've researched, the founding fathers wanted us to have our land in allodial titles, and if we patented it, then that helped protect people from other people being able to use our property, and it was to be able to exclude everyone else, use our property to ourselves, either through discovery or invention, as long as you were just using it for yourself. Now, if you create something and you put it on a market and start selling it, well, then it starts becoming subject to other things, and we'll talk about that later. But allodial title is a much higher title than fee simple. When did fee simple titles start in the state of Michigan? Even before the state of Michigan, the Governor Hull, I believe it was, in his territorial law book, said that the titles of land were going to be in fee simple. So anytime he did a land grant, that was fee simple, even if it wasn't a patent or deed. If he did land patents, the first one I have in that property title search was a land patent, so that I'm assuming was a patent in fee. It could still be taxed by the territory of Michigan. However, they didn't have a property tax at that time until 80 years later, 90 years later. And that's just somebody else's opinion here. This is not from a book or anything like that. This is just somebody else's opinion trying to say, like, hey, I'm trying to do this, but I don't understand that. And then we can see responses from attorneys if you want. But this, I'm just trying to show that other people are looking into this too. So I'm not the only one. I'm just the one that waited long enough to form a strong enough argument. This one was actually supposed to come up first, so I apologize for that. But this is the allodial title as explained by Thomas Jefferson. This article is done by an attorney who sounds like he misconstrued what he even quoted from Thomas Jefferson saying. So in here, we're going to hear the same rhetoric about the Normans starting the, they invaded England and they started the feudal system, which I know is wrong. It's been in play before that. And then here is where he starts quoting Thomas Jefferson. So we'll go over this in court. I'll read it. Maybe we'll get to a point of agreement on this point of evidence, maybe not, but I think it's just important to note. Let me go back. USA. These other animations say they start directly after the other one, so I had to let this one play through to the end. Now we have Wikipedia's definition of a loyal title. And then here at the end, it's kind of faded, but these are more quotes. Thomas Jefferson, I contemplate with sovereign reverence the act of the whole American people, which declare that their legislators should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thus thereof, building a wall of separation between church and state, which is a big thing that Montesquieu was pushing, and Jefferson was big with his French connection. To compel a man to subsidize with his taxes the propagation of ideas which he disbelieves and abhors to is sinful and tyrannical. Forcing someone to pay dues on something they don't believe in is no good. Alright, now here we have the Bureau of Land Management. This is the Federal Registry that you can go on to look up to see if there was a federal land patent on your land. This was the title that the federal government was doing before Michigan got settled in, set up a territorial government, and then set up the state of Michigan. And the federal government was still issuing land patents all the way up till the Civil War. Mine in particular, these were the only ones that came up from my section in Ingham County, and unfortunately they did not match. Not really unfortunately, but they didn't match the people that were on my search, and also the property don't line directly up with my parcel. But in this search, there is over 1,000. There was like 70 something pages, and that got submitted into evidence of all the federal land patents in Ingham County, and there's thousands of them. So who set up the patent system in the United States? Well, according to the Global Patent Solutions, which looks like a private corporation, the founding fathers did. George Washington, and they signed the first Patent Act in law, April 1790. This is literally like right after the United States Constitution. And this quote here, any useful act, manufacture, engine, machine, or device, or any improvement thereon, all that is in the United States Constitution. James Madison was another big proponent of it. This Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8. promote progress of science and useful arts. Limited times for authors and vendors to exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. So when you discover land or you get land, you claim it, it's yours. You can exclude other people from it. Now this is from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, celebrating their 212 years on the date of April 9, 2002. So you can add almost 2 more decades of celebration. Talking again, George Washington signing it, what it meant to them, how important it was to have patents because it was such a strong legal title. It's a lot harder to take a patent away from somebody. It's a big title. This is an example of a land patent that President George Washington gave to Major General Horatio Gates. It's being sold at some antique sale. There's times and descriptions of what it was about, what happened. And this is the part I'll be reading in court. And this is from our local Chelsea library. An individual named Samuel Poor. This is what a land patent looks like. Land grants can also look like this, so the word patent has to be on the document itself, as far as I know. They also have their own file numbers. And here's giving a description of it, kind of a background story. The ancestor of this person is the one who submitted this into the Chelsea library. So you can take your time and read it. This is just an example, basically. And this is how it looks up when you look it up on the Bureau of Land Management website or the GLO. Alright, this is from a law website from University of Iowa. So this must be probably the law department. Here's the author of the article. And the main thing I wanted to say out here, I believe this one was a lot more honed in on why patents were so important and how the land patent system worked. This is probably the best describing of the system of land patents, land patenting in the U.S. that I could find. It's a very not talked about topic. So go ahead and take your time to read some of this, especially the areas I've outlined, because those will be mentioned in the case. That's another section. A lot of these are quoting Supreme Court justices, and I have 2 cases that are going to show up here. one case that specifies the importance of the land patents. And this is that case. Long versus Rockwood, U.S. Supreme Court, back in 1928. And we're just talking about patents in here. I don't think this was about a land patent specifically, but just a patent, the power of a patent, and why the Founding Fathers believed in the patent to be such a powerful tool. And then those same Founding Fathers used patents for land, which should not be ignored. I'm going to be reading most of this decision here. So take your time and read over that. This slide was just to show the history of land ownership throughout Michigan. It doesn't mention all things, but it's just a quick show of how land patent offices were set up throughout Michigan. And this is from CMU, Central Michigan University. So you can take your time to read over that if you like. Talk about the population increase, the boom, the land's getting settled. At this time, this concludes disc number 2. I hope you guys followed along with the PowerPoint presentation provided on the disc as well. Looks like there will be one more disc to finish up the presentation. That will be out very, very immediately. I'll have it completed the next day. So, thank you guys for taking your time to watch this, and I hope it's been informing.